Hi, this is Sharon from SharonTheReader.com. I said I was going to do a video or a podcast on Michael Jackson. I'll be honest, of all of the ones that I've done, I think this has been the most difficult. Firstly, because there was such a lot to it. And I know I'm going to have to break this up into pieces for you. And I hope you don't mind that. But if you want all of the things that he gave me, then that's the only way I can give it to you. I'm going to start by being terribly honest with you. The controversy over Michael Jackson and the kids, I remember reading it in the paper and I didn't have a lot of interest in it. But my take on it was he was guilty. Okay? There's no other way for me to put this except to say what I was reading was, why would these parents come off with these things, and why were these parents so stupid as to leave their children with this guy, considering that there had been a trial before that, or there had been word or something. That's how strongly I was really following it, which was really not very strongly. I was going a lot of what the media said on the front page of the paper or something like that there. I didn't really get into it. And without sounding bad, one of the things I will be honest about was I never owned a Michael Jackson CD. He just wasn't my type of music. And yet, you would be in a store and they'd put something on and it would be a Michael Jackson song, and very toe-tapping, no doubt. So in that respect, I did respect his music. It just was not something I would purchase, and I buy a lot of music. What actually happened was, a few weeks ago, there was a very soft voice in the usual place at the side of my bed. And at first, I wasn't sure if it was a young girl or it was even maybe a kid. It came on fairly softly, very softly, and then eventually he said, "I'm Michael Jackson, and the reason I've come to you is I believe you tell the truth about people." And I thought, oh, okay, strange. You think you would go to someone who was a fan or something like that. But nonetheless, this is what he gave me, and he didn't give me it chronologically, which makes it difficult for me to give to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the first thing that I think in his childhood was probably detrimental. Certainly, I would imagine it was pretty detrimental. And he said that he was brought by a person, and I'm not going to mention names here, and he told me not to mention names. He said he was brought by a person, male, to another person's office. He would have been about between 5 and 7, and he said that he was raped. And it was a very severe rape, to the point that it caused blood. I can't bring myself to tell you the next thing that was done to him, or the next thing that was expected from him. Okay? He said that when he came out, the blood was running down his legs. And the person who had brought him there, the man, said, "Get in and get yourself washed." And he said he did. He washed with toilet paper. And the man handed him what he called a lady pad. And he told him to put it on. And he said when he got back to his home, he was given 2 lady pads, and he was told to put them on before he went to bed that night. so that his mother didn't see or notice any blood on the sheets. So that was Michael Jackson's introduction into the music business. I'm not saying he didn't play before that. I'm saying this was an important thing. He then said that as time went on, his brothers and him would be, doing gigs in different places, and they'd have stopovers. And obviously the other boys were older, and he said, they could have had their pick of the ladies. And they did. I'm not saying all in the one night. I'm just saying that, on certain nights there was ladies. And unfortunately, these guys were sharing a room. So he said he could hear the sound of sexual intercourse going on with his brothers, or his brother, depending on whose room he was in, and who was in the room that night, and who was in the room with the brother that night. And he said it sounded to him very painful. Sex sounded like a painful thing to him because he didn't know enough about it, and therefore to listen to those sounds just sounded horrific and painful and horrifying, and something that he thought that he never would want anything to do with in his life. There was two things that happened very young that if you're a child, maybe it would have that effect on you, and it certainly did have that effect on him. So he really didn't want to know about sex. Having said that, we're talking about a young boy here, because this doesn't last throughout his life, okay? He said, my father hated me, and he used the word hate. And he felt that it was because he was the youngest of the brothers, and his father could have coped with what we'll call his talent if it had have been with one of the older boys. But because it was with Michael and he was so young, the father deeply resented it, because it was like he was on a level that his dad couldn't cope with of that age. There was a jealousy, there was an envy, and there was a hatred, and he said that. And he also said that he hated his father. Now, I'm not sure, because as time went on, later he told me that he didn't hate his father any longer. So we're talking about at that point in time. But I wouldn't say, and maybe it's wrong because it's an assumption of mine the way he told me it, it was more to do with an acceptance of an older person as he had become. But we're sticking with the young Michael Jackson at the moment. But maybe it was with, hindsight and age that he could see where his father had kind of pushed them and maybe got something out of them that they may not have found themselves, left to their own devices. But the word was, his father hated him, and he was petrified of his dad. He then said that in his home there was all types of abuse went on. There was physical abuse, there was mental abuse, there was emotional abuse, and there was sexual abuse. And he said, I let those people speak about that for themselves. I presume the sexual abuse did not happen to him in his own home, but there was sexual abuse. His mother was a fantastic mum. She was really a loving mother, but he said his father was the boss. The mother really she didn't have a chance. What could she do to try and help her own kids except to do the best she could, which was hopefully to keep them either out of the father's road when it was acceptable, or to kind of shield them in her own way. But at no stage was leaving his father an option for his mother. One, it seemed to go against religious beliefs that she had, and two, it was also, where could she go? Should all these kids, where do you start your life when this has been your life? And equally, he had power over her as well. So he had emotional power over her, and he also had financial power over her. He said many times, he says, there were marks on all of our bodies. He said, but they were always in places that could not be seen. He said, my dad would have sat, he says, with a stick, a broom, a belt, you name it, he had it. And once you were one step out, one note off, the price you paid was unbelievable. That was physical. He said, basically, he said, whatever it took is what my father did. And he said he prided himself on that in later years, that he made them and he created the talent within them, and he brought it out and he brought it forth. And he said at the end of the day, you can bring it out with love. You don't need to bring it out with force or violence. So the house seemed to be really toxic. That's all I'll say. It seemed to be a very, very, very toxic environment. The one thing that he said at the very beginning, and maybe this is where I should have put this at the very beginning, is I done some stupid things in my life. I done really stupid things. He said, I let children into my bed. I shared my bedroom with them. He said, but at no point did I ever sexually, physically, or emotionally abuse a child. And it's kind of strange, because when he said I made mistakes, I was waiting personally for this is what I did. You know, I did abuse children. But he made it perfectly clear that at no point did he ever abuse a child. And I knew it to be true. I just knew by the way he was speaking that this wasn't coming from a guy who was covering up. He did talk about the other side. He did talk about women. He talked about his own children. He talked about his career. He talked about his death. Those things I can't give you all in one dose. Because, truthfully, for at least 3 weeks this has been crowding my head. And I didn't even intend to do this video tonight, except he was going on and on and on about wanting to get this out. Now, there's a lot of yous I know are not going to believe any of this. There's a lot of people I know will believe this. I want to say, and it's just for me, I really don't care. I don't care who believes and who doesn't believe. I know what he told me, and I'm going to stand by that. And I'm going to stand by the rest of the stuff that he told me as well, because, truthfully, if the things that he told me happened in anybody else's life, you would be horrified, and I was horrified, to the point that sometimes during the day you would go, I'm not sure I can take any more of this. Now, I did one on Jeffrey Epstein, and I found it chilling, absolutely chilling. With Michael Jackson, it was a different type of chilling, because he was the victim. And you were kind of saying to yourself, well, why don't you this or that, you know? And with every this and that I came off with, he gave me another block where he was blocked. And I don't mean that he had blocked himself, I mean that other people had blocked him. There'd be a lot said here in these videos. But I will say one thing, I am not mentioning names because he told me not to, but I am going to tell you things that I find chilling that happened to him. I did ask the usual question that I always ask, which is, would you, if reincarnation exists? And I don't know whether it does, and I've always said that. He said, I would not come back to your world for anything. I will be perfectly honest with you. What he showed me and the abuse that I watched this young boy, because he was young, you're talking probably from the ages of 5, 6, 7 up to maybe 14. It was horrific. I don't know how any child can survive that. And I said that, you have such marks on this. And yet it seems to me that perhaps the rest of your family didn't have those marks. And he says, oh, many did. Believe me, many did. The only difference is I was sensitive. Therefore, it left a bigger mark on me than perhaps some of the others. But he says, rest assured, there were marks, emotional marks, on all the rest. I will say one thing, much as I have to break this up, I want the important pieces out there. I want to get them right out there and out of the way. That's Michael, the young boy, who was quite lonely even though it was a very big family. In actual fact, and I'll probably repeat this because this was something he gave me later on, he said, my father created a factory and we were the workers. On that one, you make up your own mind what you think. But I would honestly say it's not a pleasant subject. I'm sorry. Beyond everything else that's gone on, I'm just happy to say that maybe we're getting back to a type of normality again. Maybe we are enjoying the good weather again. Maybe we're getting into our gardens, we're meeting our friends a little bit more. What I would honestly say, and what I'd like to finish with, because that was heavy stuff, well, for me it was anyway. The next podcast will not be in a month's time. I want this out there as quickly as I can get it out. So you're probably talking maybe 3-4 days for the next part, and I think I can wrap it up in 3 parts, but I don't want to leave the important parts out. And to me, this was the start of why life went so badly wrong. And remember one thing, me personally, and I can't even remember how many years ago, 20 more? I'm not even sure. I would have been one of the people who would have said, he's probably guilty. I think he's guilty. There's no smoke without fire. And at the end of the day, he brings these children to wherever it is he lives, and their parents leave them there. How stupid are their parents, knowing his reputation? And yet I'm the person sitting today saying, that man was framed. Michael Jackson was certainly not guilty. He never abused a child. He never abused them physically. He never abused them sexually. He never abused them emotionally. He never abused children. I would just like to say, as usual, take care of yourselves, be careful, take care of each other, and God bless.